Morning, folks. Angelo Spandrio talking to you from the beautiful Ojai Valley. It's August 5th, 2017. We're going to get off to a nice warm day again today. I'm here to talk with you about one of my favorite subjects, and that's water in the Ojai Valley. And this presentation concerns, can the Ojai Valley run out of water? First of all, I'd like to thank my wife, Brenda, for all of the beautiful graphics for all of my PowerPoints. They really make them look presentable, something I couldn't do. Also, I'd like to mention that a couple of things about the presentation. There's going to be a lot of data in the presentation, and the data that I've accumulated, I've gotten from official sources, such as the Casitas Municipal Water District, the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency, OBGMA, and the Watershed Protection District for rainfall in the Ojai Valley. So the data is from reliable sources. However, there are some opinions in this PowerPoint, and those opinions are all mine. I claim total responsibility for them, no matter how much you out there might disagree with them. So let's get on with this. Let's get the show on the road. So the first question is, can the Ojai Valley run out of water? And here's a beautiful valley oak on the Ojai Valley Inn grounds. And the answer to that question is, of course it can. Will the Ojai Valley run out of water? Who knows? Nobody can predict what's going to happen with our weather in the future. However, we got to remember that our only source of water in the Ojai Valley, in the Lake Casitas watershed, in the Ventura River watershed, our only source of water is local rain. And by local rain, I mean that falls on Nordoff Ridge, that falls on the Ojai Plain, if you will. The rain that falls on the Santa Ynez Mountains that contribute to runoff in Coyote Creek and Santa Ana Creek, the creeks that run into Lake Casitas. And the rainfall in the Matilahaw Mountains, where we have Matilahaw Creek, Upper Matilahaw Creek, Upper North Fork of Matilahaw Creek. All of that drainage comes into the Ventura River, which is important for the Upper Ventura River groundwater basin, which is important for diversion into Lake Casitas. And then, as I mentioned, of course, the rainfall on the Nordoff Ridge that contributes to the level in the Ojai groundwater basin. So let's go back a little bit and look at the end of last year and how close to water Armageddon were we? Well, here's a chart. It's a little bit of a busy chart, but if you look at it, this top blue curve here is Lake Casitas storage, and we have time in years across the bottom, and Lake Casitas storage in acre feet up the ordinate on the left-hand side, and then annual rainfall is on the right-hand scale. The bottom red curve is rainfall for downtown Ojai, and the orange curve or brown curve is rainfall in the Matilahaw Mountains. So what's significant about this is, ever since the drought started in roughly 2011, 2012, you can see the rate of decrease in the lake storage. This rate of decrease was around 25,000 acre feet per year. And even though we had some rainfall, and you can see it here, both in downtown Ojai and in the mountains, we had some rainfall. It did nothing to contribute to storage in Lake Casitas. So during this drought period, over this period of 5 years or so, we lost 117,000 acre feet from the lake. And that's roughly 50% of the lake storage. So in 5 years, we lost 117,000 acre feet. Here's another rainfall chart. This top curve shows the rainfall in downtown Ojai from about 1930 until now. And of course, you can look at these drought years, the last 5 years here. And nowhere in the history of rainfall in Ojai, and I have another chart that's not in this presentation that goes back to 1906, nowhere in the history of rainfall in the Ojai Valley has there been 5 years of rain or lack of rain in a row like we see here at the end of this chart. This bottom chart is interesting in that it accumulates deviation from average rainfall. And so you can see that in the last 5 years, we have just headed for the cellar in deviation from normal rainfall. So what was the Lake Casitas data last year? As I mentioned, the lake used or dropped about 25,000 acre feet per year. The lake storage on 12/31/16 was around 89,000 acre feet. And I want to start talking to you about stage drought declarations that are established by Lake Casitas. The drought declarations are labeled 1 through 5, and I'll get into more detail later. We're in stage 3 right now. Stage 4 is the next most severe drought reduction regulation, and Lake Casitas has a whole program written up to discuss what happens during these drought declarations. What happens is that it's recommended that certain watering not be done, and price for water continues to increase depending on increasing stage number. So at 89,000 acre feet of storage, and drought declaration stage number 4 comes on when the lake reaches 75,000 acre feet. We had about 14,000 acre feet more to go before stage 4 was going to be declared. And another one of my pet peeves of mine is how much sediment is in the lake, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Also down here you see that stage 5 would then come on in February of 2018. So if we hadn't had any rain this winter, we would certainly be into a stage 4 drought declaration right now. And if we hadn't had any rain in this past winter, we could look at being out of water in the lake roughly in January of 2021, or that would be 3 years from this coming January. So I mentioned sediment. So let's get back to sediment. The reason sediment is significant, or how much sediment is in Lake Casitas, is that for every acre foot of sediment that's in the lake, takes away from the available volume for water in the lake. So back at the turn of the year, this year, late 2016, early 2017, Lake Casitas issued a purchase order to do a hydrographic and land survey of the lake. That is, let's find out how much sediment has really accumulated in Lake Casitas. So this survey was scheduled to be completed months ago, and for some reason it's been delayed. It almost makes you suspicious on the length of the delay. But I just talked with Lake Casitas yesterday, and we are supposed to have more information, or perhaps even the report, in about a week. So that would be around August 11th. And of course, I'll follow up to see if there really is indeed a sediment study. Many of the studies that I researched concerning sediment accumulation in a lake ranged from 0.1% to 0.5% of lake capacity per year. So in the case of Lake Casitas, which is advertised at 254,000 acre feet of storage, 0.1% of 254,000 is 254 acre feet per year, possible accumulation of sediment. So over a period of 50 years that the lake has been in service, we could expect possibly 12,700 acre feet of sediment in the lake. What's important is the distribution of sediment in the lake. And here's a beautiful picture that was taken. My wife and I took this picture in February of this year. and it's of the Santa Ana Valley at Lake Casitas, and this is where the water runs in from the diversion canal and runs in from Santa Ana Creek. And what you can see here, if you look at this cross section of sediment, you can see that this new water coming in has scoured away the old sediment that was residing in this part of the lake. And this big arrow points to a cliff that's been eroded, and it's tough to tell, but I would suspect this cliff is anywhere between 10 and 15 feet high. So all of this is sediment that has accumulated in this portion of the lake. So what is the distribution of sediment in the rest of the lake? That's what the hydrographic survey will determine. What the hydrographic survey will do will essentially be come up with a new topographical map of the lake bottom, and then that will translate into what the new volume capacity of Lake Casitas is. I mentioned it's advertised at 254,000 acre feet. It is going to be something less than that. Then the other question is, how much sediment is residing in the pool of water that's in the lake right now? As I mentioned, stage 4 drought declaration comes on at 75,000 acre feet. I mentioned that on 12/31/16, the lake volume was around 89,000 acre feet. That means we had 14,000 acre feet to go before we declared stage 4. However, depending on how much sediment is in that 89,000 acre feet that's been published, we have to subtract from that 14,000 acre feet for water to go to get to stage 4. So no matter what, if we hadn't had any rain this winter, I think we would certainly be in stage 4 right now. After stage 4 comes the worst and final stage, and that's stage 5. So stage 5, what does that mean? Stage 5 drought reduction comes on at 65,000 acre feet. That's only 10,000 acre feet less than the stage 4 drought declaration. And I know for a fact that getting into a stage 5 drought declaration makes the people at Casitas very nervous. In fact, we have to understand that Lake Casitas has never been into any drought declarations below stage 2 until now, because the lake has never gotten this low since it spilled. So we get into stage 5, and stage 5 is defined in the Lake Casitas Water Efficiency and Allocation Program. The acronym is WEAP. And there are some rules established for what happens when we get into stage 5. One thing that's not shown on this chart is stage 5. All the water rates go up to try to discourage use. And it goes up with every stage. But of course, stage 5 is the last stage, so water rates are going up again. And other recommendations, and the lake will try to enforce these, is that there's no residential non-essential use. That is, no residential outside watering. Residents are asked to hold to 62 gallons per person per day in a 4-person household, and a 50% reduction in water use for all of their customers, including agriculture. And there's to be no turf irrigation. And of course, that would concern the Ojai Valley Inn, wouldn't it? Other measures are possible in these drought declaration stages. The WEAP was established by the Board of Directors of the Casitas Municipal Water District, so it's just a matter of that board getting together during stage 5 and saying, you know, this ain't working, we've got to do something else. So this WEAP can be changed simply by direction from the Board of Directors of Lake Casitas. All right, let's turn our attention to how the Ojai Basin groundwater stood at the end of last year. And you can see from this chart, this is a measure of depth to water in a key well near Kearney and Grand Roads. And you can see here that in August of last year, the depth to water was 265 feet. And if we look across the chart, we can see there were only 3 years that were worse, and they were a long time ago, back in the early 60s and in the 50s when record keeping actually got started. So the lake, or I'm sorry, the basin was at a pretty low level, and a lot of wells in the basin were offline because they couldn't pull water from this depth. So far as rules from the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency on pulling water out of the basin, so far as I know, there are no rules published for how people pump water. Up until this point, I think the Ojai Basin has relied on simply wells going offline, not being able to pump water, and that would become a natural conservation measure. However, there is a new groundwater management plan coming out from the Ojai Basin, and we may see some more firm guidelines come out about pulling water out of the basin. What about the Upper Ventura River groundwater basin? Last year, before we had rain, the basin was at a near record low. The Ventura River Water District that gets their water from the Upper Ventura River groundwater basin, they normally have 4 wells online. During this drought at the end of last year, they only had 1 that was able to pump water. Miners Oaks Water District, similar case, they have 4 wells, but none of those were pumping at the end of last year because the water level in this basin was too low. So where are we today? Well, here's a drought monitor, U.S. drought monitor for California from July 25th of this year. And you can see the light brown areas in Southern California, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, and a couple of others. We're still classified as being in a moderate drought, and we've been in a moderate drought for some time. What about rainfall? Here's a rainfall chart showing a distribution of rainfall in our watershed. As I mentioned, we got pretty good rain. If you look here at the watershed for Matilahaw Creek, Upper North Fork, North Fork of Matilahaw Creek, you can see that we had probably 30 to 40 inches of rain in the backcountry. And that all contributed to water flow into the Ventura River, down the Ventura River. That influenced how much water we could get through the diversion canal to the lake. And then, of course, also contributed to the storage in the Upper Ventura River groundwater basin. On the south slope of the Santa Ynez Mountains, we had White Ledge Peak here that got a good amount of rainfall, and that contributes directly to the flow into Coyote Creek, which goes into the lake. And this watershed across the south slope of the Santa Ynez Mountains also feeds Santa Ana Creek, and that's the Santa Ana Canyon I showed you that had all the sediment in it that we had that picture. This water flow goes into Santa Ana Creek, and which also goes into the lake. Nordoff Ridge got a good bunch of rain, 37 inches of rain. Downtown Ojai got almost 27 inches of rain. So all of this rainfall here contributed to increase of storage in the Ojai groundwater basin. Here's an updated chart showing the effect of the rainfall that we had this past winter. And so here we get a little bounce up in lake storage because of the increased rainfall both in the Matilahaw Mountains and in downtown Ojai. So overall, the effect is not that great, except that we stopped this steep slope of fall off. But if we get back into a drought, this kind of fall off is going to resume here again if we get back into a drought situation. So here's Lake Casitas data. The peak storage this winter occurred on 3/27/17 at 111,000 acre feet plus. And the storage, as I mentioned before, on 12/31/16 was 89,000 feet plus. So we had a lake level rise this winter of a little over 22,000 acre feet. And if you recall, I mentioned that during normal usage, we pull around 20 to 25,000 acre feet per year out of the lake. So that means this winter we probably gained 1 year worth of water in the lake. The same data as of July 31st of this year, the lake storage was a little over 104,000 acre feet, which is 42.5% of capacity. Once again, assuming no sediment in the lake. So the decrease in storage since 3/3/27 was around 7,600 acre feet. And of course, big portion of that is evaporation. So in these 4 months, let's see, 327 to 727 would be 4 months. So we've used about a third of the water that we accumulated this winter. So back to the demand reduction stages. As I mentioned, we're currently in stage 3. And if the drought resumes, we can expect to encounter a stage 4 drought declaration in December of 2018 at 75,000 acre feet. So that's a little over a year from now. And a year and a half from now, we can expect to go into stage 5 in June of 2019 if we don't get any more rain, or if we get back into a drought situation. So if we get into a drought situation, we can be out of water in February of 22, which is around 4.5 years from now. So if we're going to do anything to find another source of water, if the drought resumes, we've only got 4.5 years to do it. We cannot survive another 5-year drought like we've just been through. So out of water on February of 2022 if we get back into a drought situation. Let's look at the Ojai Basin recharge. The little rubber duck shows what happened this year. This particular chart is from Daniel B. Stevens and Associates. It was done under contract to the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency. This is a theoretical model of how much the basin will rise depending on rainfall. We have rise in the basin storage in acre feet in the ordinate in this vertical axis here. In the horizontal axis, we have rainfall in inches as measured at rain gauge H030, and that's near Soul Park. So the rubber duck is showing a little bit above predicted rainfall, but pretty much in the area. Basin rise is anticipated to be around 14,000 acre feet, and as I mentioned, we had almost 27 inches of rain. 14,000 acre feet is a good chunk of water to accumulate in the basin. So we had great accumulation of storage in the basin this year. So what happened to the well levels? The depth to water in that key well that I showed you before as of June 5th was up to 164 feet. So that's a rise of about 100 feet in the depth to water in that particular well, which is significant. We get a lot more wells coming online when we get this water level up. Excuse me. So Ojai Basin use, as I mentioned, with a higher water level in the basin, I think the use of water out of the basin is going to increase. Recently, they've been extracting water out of the basin during the drought, toward the end of the drought, at 3,000 to 3,500 acre feet per year. In 2012, the amount extracted was 5,300 acre feet. So, of course, in 2012, the water levels were much higher. So if we had a 14,000 acre foot increase in storage, and if we get back to pulling 5,000 acre feet a year, we could have 2 to 3 years worth of water in the basin, assuming we don't get much recharge. If we get back into a drought situation, we will not have much recharge in the basin, as that previous chart showed. In fact, let me go back 2 charts. You can see on this chart, if we get down to 10 inches of rain, we get very, very little recharge in the basin. So this contractor went on record as saying recharge is less than 1,000 acre feet when rain is less than 10 inches a year. So if we get back into a drought situation at 10 inches per year, we're not going to get much recharge, if any, in the basin. What about the Upper Ventura River groundwater basin after this winter? Boy, they were certainly happy. The levels in the Ventura River were extremely good for a long period of time, and recharged that groundwater basin. Ventura River Water District has all 4 wells back online, and they think they've got a 2 to 3 year supply of water in that basin. Same thing for the Miners Oaks Water District. All 4 of their wells are back online, so everything is hunky-dory there. So as I mentioned, our only source of water for Lake Casitas, for the Ojai Basin, for the Ventura River Basin is rain. So what hope do we have about new water sources? And here we're going to get into some of Angelo's opinions about things, but I think there are four relevant possibilities for new sources of water, and that's a state water project tie-in, the Matilla horizontal bores, we call them hobos, potential Santa Barbara connection, and desalination. Here's a state water project tie-in schematic. In a nutshell, state water project tie-in involves hooking up via a pipeline that'll either run underneath the Santa Clara River or across the Highway 118 bridge across the Santa Clara River. The study is being conducted right now. The study should be completed in May of 2018, and a determination will then be made on how this new pipe will run. But essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be accessing water from the Cayugas Municipal Water District, who gets their water from the Metropolitan Water District. Metropolitan Water District in Los Angeles has three sources of water essentially, from the Colorado River, from the Ojai Valley, and of course from Lake Oroville down the Sacramento River to the Delta. And water then is pumped from the Delta into the California Aqueduct, which then comes down into the Metropolitan Water District, and that's where Cayugas gets their water. So Cayugas has piping that goes to the Springville Reservoir in Camarillo. So right now that appears to be a favored connection point for this new piping that's going to come and connect to the Ventura River water, or I'm sorry, the Ventura City of Ventura water system in Satacoy. This connection right here. So Lake Casitas is supplying water to Ventura right now. Lake Casitas has a line that ends up being 30 inches in diameter that goes to the intersection of Olive and Ramona in Ventura. And this is where Western Ventura gets their supply of water from Lake Casitas at around 4,000 acre-feet per year. So my contention is that if we get into a bad situation, it would be great to have this connection so that we can then, if we need to, we can pump water from here, our state water allocation, we can pump back up the hill to Ojai. I don't think that's very politically popular right now. I think what is being considered is that no water will be pumped up the hill to Ojai. I think that's the direction it's headed. I don't know how that can be changed politically. The reason I'm also a proponent of wanting to have access to a hookup to state water is it allows us access to the state water project marketplace. And that is, if you have a piping connection to the state water, then you have the ability to buy water anywhere in the state water project system. A good example of that is the Central Coast Water Agency, which is the water agency that supplies water to Santa Barbara, for instance. They have a state water project connection, and in, I believe the years were 2014 and 2015, they got into a very tight situation for water. And they were able to purchase water from a rice farmer in the Sacramento area who decided it was better for him to sell water than use it to grow rice. So they were able to buy this water, and I think they bought 14 or 15,000 acre-feet for a couple of years. That really saved their bacon in their own water supply. And they were able to do that simply because they were hooked up to the state water project system. So that's why I think being hooked up via a pipeline is important, because it allows us the ability to buy water from somewhere else. We just don't have to look at our water allocation, which is 5,000 acre-feet per year. We have the ability, if we have a pipe, we can buy water and pump more water than that to Ojai if we need it. But as I said, I don't think politically this solution is going to fly for Ojai, and that bothers me greatly. The horizontal bores, this is something the Casitas Municipal Water District is really behind. And the horizontal bores consist of horizontal wells drilled into the southern facing slope of the Santa Ynez Mountain Range above Lake Casitas, these horizontal bores here. They're horizontal wells, and the theory is that there are Mustelaha sandstone formations that reside inside these mountains, and these formations contain pockets, pools of water, and in some cases the estimate of water there is considerable. So the horizontal bores would be horizontal wells that would tap this water. This is on National Forest Service land, so I think the environmental impact statements are going to be tricky and considerable. To get Forest Service approval to drill these wells, I think is going to be difficult. Horizontal wells, these horizontal wells are going to have significant technical challenges. However, Casitas believes in this potential. In fact, just for these initial look-sees, if you will, Casitas has already invested over $250,000 in this approach. The recharge to these pockets of water is typically very slow, so there may be periods of time where water will not be accessible because of recharge. I think there are a lot of questions about how well this system would work, assuming you can get all the ducks in a row. Santa Barbara connection. Santa Barbara is currently connected to the State Water Project via the Central Coast Water Agency. So they have that connection. Santa Barbara also has an operational desalination plant. They're running at around 3,000 acre feet per year now, and this plant is expandable to 10,000 acre feet per year. Santa Barbara is also moving on a potable reuse program to cut down their reliance on new sources of water, and even to cut down the load on their desal plant. And Santa Barbara is quite willing to sell us water if we can figure out a piping connection between Carpinteria and Casitas. And once again, I don't believe that this program is going to be politically popular with Casitas. I'm not sure of that. But I think this is, rather than going south to the city of Ventura, then going east to Callegas, getting tied in with the Metropolitan Water District, I think this is a viable alternative to getting to where we need to go, including access to desalinated water with this desal plant in Santa Barbara already in operation. And then talking about desalination, Callegas put out a wonderful study about a potential desalination plant located near Port Hueneme. The cost is huge. The years to get it done are lengthy. There are a lot of technical and permitting issues that have to be overcome. But obviously, desalinated water is not dependent on rain or the State Water Project. The statewide poll in California shows that support for desalinated water is really increasing in the state of California. Something else I discovered is that filter membrane technology is changing rapidly in this industry. There's a new substance out that they're studying called graphene, which would replace the current membranes. Current membranes are difficult to maintain. They require a large plant footprint. Graphene or some other material that's discovered would be able to reduce plant footprint, would be able to lower maintenance costs. So this industry, I think, is going to be changing a lot in the next 15 years. So why not get started with some of the initial work on a desalination plant for Ventura County? I don't think there's any reason not to start looking into it, to start gaining ground on some of these permitting issues. 15 years from now, the technology may be such that a lot of things have changed in the outlook for desalination. So I'm saying it's time to get on board looking at seawater desalination for Ventura County. So what threats are we facing? Well, I think the first threat, of course, is no rainfall. And there ain't much we can do about that. So let's look at the potential for no rainfall if you want to look into a crystal ball. Looking back at this chart, we can see that this chart has been updated to show the 2017 rainfall. And what I want to mention here, well, let me go down to this chart first, the accumulated deviation from normal rainfall. After all that rain we got in 2017, this is the difference that's made in this chart. So we get a little tiny bump up in this accumulated deviation chart. Not much of a bump from the rainfall that we got. Something else I wanted to point out if we're looking into a crystal ball. You see these peaks here in 2017, in 2011, in 2005, and in 1998. These peaks have kind of an interesting slope to them, and they have kind of an interesting gap in between them. So I took those 4 points and put them into this chart. And here are those 4 points again. So what this interestingly shows, this is the maximum rainfall in downtown Ojai. So as I mentioned, in 1998, in 2005, in 2011, and in 2017. So we have a steady decrease in the maximum rainfall falling in Ojai, and there are 6 to 7 years between these peaks. And the amount of rainfall accumulated in those gaps is interesting. We had the total amount of rainfall in this gap was 101 inches. The total amount of rainfall in this gap was 88 inches. And the total amount of rainfall in this gap was 50 inches. And they're all separated by 6 to 7 years. So if we think this 20 years may repeat, it may continue, then in about 2023, we're looking at the maximum rainfall in downtown Ojai as being below normal, or at around 19 inches. And of course, if the accumulated rainfall in this period of time follows the trend, we're going to be in a severe drought situation again. So 2023 is a little over 5 years away. As I mentioned, if we get into a drought situation like we've seen, we've only got 4+ years of water in the lake. We've got three years or so of water in the basin. That means if this trend continues, we're going to be in trouble. Whoops. So the threat there was no rain. And here's another threat. Well, my wife and I tried to make this steelhead look threatening. And the poor old steelhead is not the real threat. What is the real threat are the people that are trying to manage survival of the steelhead in this environment and in this changing climate condition. Now, I'm not an anti-steelhead person, so please don't come looking for me to tar and feather me or to read me the riot act. All I'm saying is that your water supply is being affected and is going to be affected more by the regulations people are imposing on water use for the sake of the steelhead. It's already happening right now. If you look at the San Antonio rehabilitation, the spreading ground rehabilitation, tremendous amount of water came down in San Antonio Creek this past winter. Not 1 cubic foot of it was diverted into the basins that were created for the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds. And that's because of regulation on how much water the fishery services wants to run down San Antonio Creek for the steelhead. So we need to pay attention to these regulations that are coming down. And if the regulations start going crazy, we may have the 2 or 3 steelhead that are residing in Ventura River now still surviving, and we'll all be gone. Here's an interesting picture I discovered, and I just wanted to show it to you. This is the Ventura River Estuary sandbar. And here's the sandbar down here that's holding the Ventura River back from getting into the Pacific Ocean. And of course, here's the Ventura River running up here in a northerly direction. The steelhead regulations. Oh, by the way, here's the Main Street Bridge across the Ventura River. My dad used to catch steelhead off of that bridge, he told me, when he was a kid, back in the 20s and 30s. Anyway, getting back to the subject, steelhead season doesn't start until there's enough flow in the Ventura River. And by steelhead season, I mean steelhead regulations on water use. That season, if you will, doesn't start until the flow in this river punches through this sandbar. And the date that the punch through occurs is significant. In fact, this year, this sandbar was breached on January 3rd of 2017. So steelhead can only migrate when this sandbar is breached. And so it did breach this time. So maybe we had some steelhead actually trying to transit back and forth. And of course, that sandbar doesn't last very long. And as you know now, the Ventura River is not flowing. So this sandbar, and though I don't have proof, this sandbar is now probably rebuilt. And so there is no water flowing between the Ventura River and the Pacific Ocean. And take it for what it is. I think it's an interesting data point. And I think the other threat is that we're going to simply stick our heads in the mud and not pay attention to what's going on around us. As I mentioned, if we get back into a 5-year drought, it's curtains, because we don't have 5 years of water sitting there unless we find a new source of water. So while there's still time, folks, we've got 4+ years of water, even if we get into another drought. While there's still time, we had better figure out how we're going to find another source of water. So what can you do? I think you need to not be that guy with his head in the mud. You need to get out, pay attention, look around, try to influence some of these politics that may not be going in a direction that you believe, and see what we can do to change the course of events so that we can find or have a new source of water if we're going to need it in 4 years. So thank you very much. I would encourage you to get in touch with me. Here's my contact information, my telephone number, my email address. I would be very, very pleased to give this presentation to any groups that you may have that may be interested. And obviously I do this for free because of my concern for the Ojai Valley. So if you have any comments, suggestions, or would like me to give this presentation in some other place, please get in touch with me. So it's warming up out there. It's a beautiful sunny day, so I think I'll get back out and enjoy it myself. Thank you very much.